We've got two hot wars breaking out already involving democracies. Taiwan threatened by China next. Where are the great leaders of the West, though? You know, I remember when we had Ronald Reagan in the United States, we had Margaret Thatcher in Britain, and okay, you know, it's just Australia, but we also had Bob Hawke, who I thought was pretty good. All of them at the same time. But look now, we've got Albanese. The US has got the weak Joe Biden. And Britain now has this joker, Keir Starmer, bungling a big speech, big time, when he talked about the hostages held by Hamas.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Joining me, I know that hostages is tragic, but sausages, I mean, where did that come from? Joining me is Rowan Dean, editor-in-chief of The Spectator Australia and host of Outsiders on Sky News every Sunday at 9 a.m. Free the sausages. Rowan, slip of the tongue, I've got it. But instantly, it's made him a laughing stock around the world. Just unfortunate or what?
No, not unfortunate, appalling, and rightly so, a laughing stock around the world. But worse than a laughing stock, because the hostages themselves, who were taken in the most barbaric act since the Holocaust on October 7th last year, the most vile, atrocious attack that any civilized nation has seen since the Holocaust, the individuals who were unfortunate enough to be taken hostage into the bowels of Hamas and Gaza's tunnels have suffered the most appalling situation you can possibly imagine. As has been said, it's like they're living through the Holocaust themselves. The terror, the fear they would have in those dark, dank tunnels just is appalling. So if you're talking about the releasing of the hostages, and if you're talking about the situation in Gaza, and you are so flippant, so careless, so disengaged from what you are actually talking about, that you're just reading words off an auto cue, that you could come out with something like release the sausages, you do not deserve to be the leader of a Western nation. You are a buffoon, a clown. You have disgraced yourself, as well as so disgustingly disgraced those individuals who have suffered so much and have met such an appalling fate, many of them. I was sickened by that, Andrew. Absolutely sickened.
You have put your finger on it. He wasn't paying attention. The words didn't mean much to him. He was just reading it out and misread something. You know, if you were just saying it like that, you really meant it, you wouldn't say sausages. I mean, there it is. But Rowan, all right, the world's laughing at that. That Prime Minister, the British Prime Minister, said something else in his speech that I found even more chilling, because this he meant. And it's a sign of this new woke authoritarianism of the left. And not just there, throughout the Western world. Listen to this.
Markets don't give you control. That's almost literally their point. So if you want a country with more control, if you want the great forces that affect your community to be better managed, whether that's migration, climate change, law and order, or security at work, then that does mean more decisive government. And that is a Labour government. Taking back control is a Labour argument.
Rowan, that's a speech that, to me, sums up the left today. Give us more control over your lives.
100%, Andrew. And in fact, those sentiments are not new. Keir Starmer could have been reading off the playbook of Lenin, Stalin, the Gramsci School, the Frankfurt School, Cloud and Piven, the American communists who set out a strategy. The list goes on and on. Saul Alinsky. Communists and socialists, the extreme left, have for decades and for a century been laying out the only way to defeat democracy. They've said it time and time again, is to make the situation within our democracy so chaotic, so unhappy, so miserable, so dysfunctional, that people would beg for a power to come in, step in, and take control. It's even the playbook that Hitler used, amongst many others. Mao Zedong, the list goes on and on and on. Always chaos followed by a government seeking control to supposedly bring in a peaceful resolution. always ends up in dictatorship, which always ends up in poverty, which always ends up in war and death. This guy making that statement that markets don't work, that he goes on to say that we will raise taxes in order to bring in more public servants, in order to put more control over your lives. This is a recipe for out and out socialism, communism, authoritarianism, even totalitarianism. And it is so despicable. Either this guy is so dumb that he doesn't realize that he's spelling it out, or he's so clever that he's quite prepared to brazenly put forward a plan to destroy democracy in Britain.
You know, I asked at the top, where are the great leaders of the West today? I could only think of three, and you gave me one of the names when I was talking to you earlier about it. Argentina's President Javier Milei, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, and a woman, Italy's Giorgia Meloni, who on the same day that Starmer gave his speech calling for more government control, well, she gave a far greater speech calling for freedom, for the West to stop apologising for itself. I found this inspiring stuff. I've listened to some of it.
The West is a system of values in which the person is central, men and women are equal and free, and therefore the systems are democratic. Life is sacred, the state is secular, and based on the rule of law. Our freedom and our values and the pride we feel for them are the weapons our adversaries fear the most. So we can't give up the strength of our own identity, for that would be the best gift we can make to authoritarian regimes.
You'll remember, Rowan, that before she was elected, there were all these hit jobs on her in the media about how she was a neo-fascist and it was terrible and far right. It seems that she's the one talking freedom, and a lot of other leaders in the West, particularly the English-speaking world, they are not.
Isn't it extraordinary, Andrew, how those leaders that are capable of just laying it out, common sense, basic common sense, no frills, you mentioned Margaret Thatcher, Ronald Reagan, Giorgia Meloni, they can lay out an argument simply about the role of government being to assist the individual, to provide the greatest amount of freedom for the individual to prosper, for that individual and their family to prosper. That's it. It's not rocket science. Yet the left ties itself up in knots with climate change or this or transgenderism or this or human rights or so on and so on. All which is about, as you mentioned with Keir Starmer, seizing control of power over people's lives. It's the collective versus the individual. Every government that prizes the role of the individual in society is successful, economically successful, and those individuals prosper in that society. Every society where these politicians step forward promising you a better life, so long as you give up your freedom and give them the control over your life, all will be better. They are the ones who create poverty, despair, war, and misery, and must be resisted at all costs. All praise to Giorgia Meloni. It's so simple. Let's hope that Peter Dutton plays the same playbook here. We need a leadership here because, as you mentioned earlier, we are now in the position where the Albanese government is little better than a clown show.